everyone. I'm finally keeping my promise, which is so exciting, of having back to back episodes. This week was a really, really special one. I absolutely loved this conversation. Ozoz is someone I had met virtually, and her work really stood out to me. She has a new cookbook that just came out focused on Nigerian food, and we really dug deep into the recipes, why she made it, how she made it, and we talked about her time with Anthony Bourdain, the time she cooked for him, and she just has so many incredible anecdotes that I think foodies like you and me will definitely enjoy. I put a link to her cookbook, as I always do, in my Amazon storefront, so you can click on that to shop it. And I will also put the link to her YouTube video and segment with Anthony Bourdain so you can enjoy it as much as I did. So please join me in welcoming the lovely and incredible Ozoz.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So it's so great to meet you. Welcome to the Livvin for Food Pod. I'm glad we connected over our Facebook group, our little writers Facebook group that I check in on every once in a while. But first I want to say congrats on your cookbook because it came out last week. How are you feeling?
Thank you so much, Liv. I'm feeling good, excited. It's so lovely to have people reflect back to you some of the work that went into it, but also their unique thoughts, right? And it's interesting to see how it's met people at various places in their lives. So I'm super pleased.
I'm sure, as you should be. It's one thing to work so hard on something, but then to see it come to fruition and people actually implementing it into their lives, it must be extremely rewarding. So
It
congratulations
is.
on that.
Thank you.
Of course. So I would love to get into your background first. I was watching your TED Talk. I did a little digging. I know it's about 10 years old, that TED Talk now, but I feel like a lot of the information is still relevant. So I know you were born and tell me if I'm mispronouncing anything as well, but I know you were born in Warri, Nigeria.
Perfect.
Really?
Yes.
Yay! That's so exciting. I want to start in those first 9 years of your life. You mentioned you didn't really like food. You didn't really eat. Was this a picky eating thing? Walk me through what the reasoning was for rejecting a lot of foods early in your life.
I don't even know. It was more than picky. It was beyond picky eating. I don't know if it was the texture of the food, if it was the flavors. I'm not sure what it was, but there wasn't anything I particularly enjoyed. And my parents, who were both food lovers, explored so much and tried so many things, but what I suspect is that I was never really allowed to get hungry. If you
Oh,
know anything about Nigerians, it is a culture where food is a form of love and nourishing and feeding. So there's always food. You're always, like, you never really get a chance to not eat. You're always being offered one thing or the other. And I think that I never really got a chance to be hungry, to desire food, because I was overwhelmed all the time. So
yeah, right. When it's kind of always around you, it's not as much of a specialty as if like, oh, I'm starving and I want to eat this bowl of pasta or rice or whatever.
which is what happened to me when I was 9. We went abroad, we went on holiday. My dad took my sister and I to Edinburgh, and
Oh,
we
beautiful.
it was stunning. It's still one of my favorite cities because of the memories I had when I was 9 years old.
Oh.
But I think that, as tourists do, we walked a lot, we did a lot of sightseeing, and on one particular day, I worked up an appetite and I was starving. And so when my dad offered us food and we went to like a fast food place, I was like I literally pounced on my meal and asked for seconds. And my father was shocked, probably one of the greatest shocks of his life, because for years prior to that, it was literally a case of tears, tantrums, and threats to get me to eat.
That's so funny. Travel will do that to you. It'll when you're having a long travel day and you don't have any food, it'll make you really hangry and pounce on anything in your way. That's
Yep.
funny. I almost had a similar experience in a way because I was very picky. Like I didn't want my foods to touch, but my parents are not risky eaters as well. And
Mm-hmm.
by risky, I just mean not necessarily closed minded, but they just don't like a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't trying a ton of new foods or anything like that. And I maybe adopted that, or even I was even worse. I think I literally was like had the same lunch every single day. My friends knew what I was eating every day, and I eventually turned the tables. And there was one day where I was like, I can't remember the exact dish, but I texted my dad and I was like, I just tried this food, and he goes, "You did? That's insane." So I think I made his world turn a little bit with that too. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. It's funny because even though I'm very adventurous with food, I'm picky. And there are weeks where I will literally eat the same thing
I do that
at
too.
least once a day. Like I go through weeks where, okay, this week it's bread, butter, and jam. Next week it's avocado and gari, or it's yogurt and fruit. Like for days at a stretch. So I guess they're meals that ground us and make us, I don't know, we find
Yeah,
wholesome at different points.
absolutely too. I eat the same breakfast every day and I have for maybe 5 years now. I don't even know. I
What
mean,
is
I
it?
switch up once in a while. The thing is it's so basic. Like it's nothing. Literally all I have is an egg, a banana, and toast, and that's it. That's it. It's not even like it's not like part of my culture. It's not
Hmm.
like anything fantastical, but like for some reason I started just doing that in college, and there was this chef that taught me how to make eggs, and I started making it that way, and then I just started eating that every single day. I switch it up once in a while if I'm craving French toast or whatever,
Hmm.
but I don't know. There's like a comfort and control in having the same food, and I just had a chicken cutlet phase too, so I was eating those around the clock. But
That's lovely.
so your two distinct memories were eating that fast food, the taste of a green apple. I
Yes.
saw it in my TED talk. Walk me through that feeling of enjoyment from finally feeling hungry to starting to cook yourself.
I started to appreciate flavor
Mm,
and texture and also smell. When I think about that green apple, there's definitely a very strong smell memory that accompanies the taste memory. And I think those brought me delight in a way. And I feel like I'm always on that journey of seeking to understand flavors better, seeking to enjoy and experience textures. I kind of went from this, okay, now I'm eating, well, maybe this food thing isn't that bad. And I became open to trying things. Around age 13, I started cooking because both my parents love food. They love to cook. They would explore and experiment with all sorts of things. So that kind of got me into understanding ways to prepare the basic elements. And I would watch them, I'd watch the things they did and how they kind of coaxed flavor, with sauteing, the way they worked with ingredients. My mom loved green bell peppers, and I do to this day because she used them in ways that the distinct kind of fresh aroma and flavor of green peppers came through. My sisters and I and our friends used to cook outside. So we would
oh,
get tin cans, we would steal items from the pantry, and we would just try making many of the same foods we had on the table, but we would just try recreating them. So, like soft
that's so
doughs.
impressive.
Yes. They were older, they were
I,
like 2 or 3 years older than me. So they were far ahead.
yeah.
And so lots of the things we would make, we would have for lunch or dinner, we would try to recreate in our playtime. And we would forage things, we would get things from the pantry, and I was like, oh, this is fun. This is alchemy. We're mixing, There was
When you said forage, I was like, oh no, are you picking berries out of the forest?
so we lived in an area where we had lots of fruit and vegetable trees. So like
Okay.
almost everyone had gardens, and then we had lots
Oh,
and lots
fancy.
of fruit trees, like fruit trees in the way you don't even see today. Like I grew up
Oh,
literally
that sounds.
plucking guavas from trees. I could identify like which ones were pink guavas or white guavas. Like
Oh,
so we would
wow.
just
That's
gather
incredible.
things. We'd walk around where we lived and gather fruits and all sorts of things, and then try our hands at.
I would pick something poisonous by accident. I just know it.
And I think for us, the kind of it was obvious the things that were edible and the ones that weren't.
Yeah, you learn. Yeah.
And then so from there, I moved away from home. I moved to university first in Nigeria. And I really enjoyed food. So I would cook for my boyfriend, I'd cook for my friends, I would explore, I'd experiment. And then I quit that university and I moved abroad to Liverpool.
Okay. And that was to study
That
geology,
was to
right?
study geology.
Okay.
And I was like, I was discovering new foods. And I remember once I was with my friends and we were in love with nachos. And so we would buy jars of Doritos salsa. And I remember looking at a
Oh
jar of
my
Doritos salsa and I was like, this is really tasty. But I'm a student.
God.
It's £3. We literally finish a jar each time the three of us have a snack. I'm going to look at the ingredients and I'm going to figure out how to make this. So I looked at the ingredients, wrote them out, and I spent $3 on those ingredients and I made enough salsa for like 8 or 10 batches, but it was also a
Wow.
hundred times more flavorful and delicious than the jar. This was in
I
19
believe that.
this was in 1998. I still make that salsa today.
Wow. Okay, so what's the key? It's just a few
The key is
ingredients?
it's tomatoes, onions, peppers, green bell peppers, ginger,
Oh.
garlic, ketchup, and a little
Oh.
bit of vinegar, some dried oregano and mixed herbs. I have a recipe on my website, so I'll share it with you
Yeah.
afterwards. But I still make it today, and I'm talking what 30 something years? No, 30 something, 98. Anyway, I can't count. But since 1998,
Close
my
enough.
children love it, right? And
That's so
so
interesting.
yeah, and I kind of got to this phase where I was like, okay, I want to learn more about food. So I kind of first started with Nigerian food and then realized that Nigerian food had the ingredients didn't only have to be used in the Nigerian context. And I kind of went into my new Nigerian kitchen phase. So that's pretty much the
The through
journey,
line.
yes.
Yeah. No, that was a great explanation. I was watching too. I know you kind of described your father as like a cook extraordinaire or a food hero. Did he have a similar breakdown of, okay, let's look at these ingredients and let's kind of make something? What was his process like that kind of impacted you in the way you cook, if anything?
My father spent his early adult years in the UK as a bachelor, so he learned to cook. And just
Oh,
watching him
okay.
when I was growing up, I noticed that he did a lot of meal prep. So in Nigeria, we eat a lot of stews that are made up of tomatoes, onions, and peppers, both sweet and hot. And my dad would blend onions and keep in a jar in the fridge, tomatoes, peppers. And so he could, any day, any time, just kind of combine ingredients. But I noticed that there was a process of coaxing flavor. So he would saute onions low and slow with a pinch of salt, and then he would add other ingredients. And I was like, there was method. There was method. There was also ritual. He also liked gadgets. So he would buy lots of gadgets and
Oh,
like we had like a popcorn maker. It wasn't a big deal, but he had a popcorn maker. He had this convection oven slash rotisserie machine, and my father would make us
Oh yeah.
sole and lemon for breakfast on Saturdays. He had soda streams. I don't even have a soda stream, but I knew what a soda stream was when I was a teenager because my dad was obsessed. So I guess it was things like that, and he was always tinkering and he would try different versions of different things. The salt and lemon, he would tinker with how much lemon, the methods. So I kind of saw that experimental
Yeah, the
approach.
curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah, that's always a good trait to have, especially in the kitchen, because I feel like I'm always kind of throwing things together and it comes out great at the end, but experimenting is how you get to your final recipe for a cookbook or something. That's why people try it out 70 or 20 times in a row or more than that probably. But when you were in London, so you kind of started cooking more Nigerian food to feel less homesick, like more of a comfort thing. What was your simple comfort meal at the time? Did you feel like you learned enough to kind of recreate from your parents? Because I know you were making like the salsa and kind of deciphering it from there. But what were you doing at the
I
time?
was making things like stew. So stew in Nigeria is like a ragu. Yeah, so
Okay,
a tomato rich sauce
like sauce based. Yeah, kind of.
that you can
Okay.
eat with many things. So I was trying to, and that was also one of the recipes my sisters and I tinkered with when we were young. So I would make stew, and I'd be like, I'm missing this, I'm missing that, but also I loved yam, which is it's a
Oh,
starchy tuber, and that was my first exposure to purchasing Nigerian ingredients abroad. And because in Nigeria, you'll buy a whole tuber of yam, like you would buy a whole potato.
right.
But I went to this Asian shop once and I got a whole tuber of yam. And when I got to the till, it was like it cost like £30 or something. I was like, sorry?
I believe it.
What? And they were like, yeah, and the guy at the till was like, well, but you can actually just show us how much you want and we'll cut it for you. What? I was
You're
stunned.
like,
It's like
what?
buying like a piece of a sweet potato or a potato, right?
Yeah,
And
what?
I think that was the first time I was like, wait, ingredients aren't really common. Like these things cost for the amount I paid for that piece of, the piece of yam. I could have bought tubers in Nigeria. Well, sometimes I laugh and say a whole barn, but
Yeah.
so I was eating rice and stew. I was eating boiled yam or fried yam and stew. I was also
Yeah.
looking for plantains and eating. We fry plantains in Nigeria and we have them in a savory way. And so I was also looking for plantain to make dodo and enjoy with stew. Yeah, so
Okay,
those were kind of
yum.
like my go-tos.
Your go-tos. It's so interesting how like I feel like all of our cultures and ingredients are so similar, but what's accessible in different places is just so varied and interesting to me. Because even here, I was writing an article on a Middle Eastern recipe that was going viral, and it took me so long to find this one ingredient. It was
Knafe,
like
the pistachio
pistachio.
cream. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It was that.
yeah, I
You knew
knew
what
what
I
you're
was
talking
talking
about.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it took me forever and it was so expensive, but I was like, you would think something like that when we have so many similar varieties like Nutella
Mm-hmm.
or like whatever variety of cream we're eating, but it's just so interesting to me how like the lack of resources and knowledge kind of is dispersed around. But anyways, that was my long point.
But well made. Well, but a very important one. I think you
Mhm.
underscore what I like to think of as all the ways we're similar in spite of our differences. And you're speaking to that in many similarities, many connections, but sometimes the infrastructure that enables those connections be seamless and always there.
Right, right. Yeah. And I feel like, too, this actually brings up a good point that I was going to bring up a little bit later, but there was a quote that you said that I had written down because I really liked it. You said every culture has the same elements that we think are just ours, which I think you were speaking on a fried dough
Mm-hmm.
dish, kind of similar to what we're talking about now, how we all kind of have different variation and own version of it. But it's just refreshing to hear because we're in such a time where society is using those differences as such a divide and we're going further and further and further apart. And food is just such a commonality where we can all try and agree and learn and talk to each other. And, it's people like you who can bring that back to ground us a little bit.
People like us, because I think you're doing an excellent job with making
Oh,
space for
well,
the
thank
stories
you.
and having these conversations. I think they're very, very important. And like you said, it's a
Thank you.
time of many parts joy and despair in some sense.
Hmm.
And and
No,
and I
that's
think
right.
without making it sound flippant, to some extent we all eat, and food is to a great extent an integral part of cultures. It's what has sustained us for centuries. To see it used in ways that cause division, that cause pain and suffering is heartbreaking, especially when you love food and you know how it has comforted you, how it has helped you build bridges with people from other cultures, how it's nourished and sustained you through a variety of life events. It's just, it can do so much for us. And I have a deep respect for cultures and cuisines, even when I may not necessarily understand the dish or the drink in front of me, even when the textures may not be those that I'm used to, I can still understand that the agricultural process that has gone into saving the seeds, the embodied knowledge of planting and harvesting, the process of preparing and getting that to us on our grocery store shelves or in markets is one that's deeply imbued with culture, right, and knowledge, and that should be respected regardless of who it comes from or the geographic location that it's associated with.
Yeah, they're respecting the hard work in itself, and I think sometimes we could become desensitized to it just because it's eating and cooking is a part of my daily life. Like it's been a luxury for me to always have food around or always have my dad cooking or something, but not everyone has, that form of luxury. And I think recognize it and continuing to have conversations that educate. Like I know you're a lot really into food history and you're really pushing that. And I think it's so interesting and not a lot of people know all of the stuff that's going behind it. It's so nuanced, the whole concept of food, but in the same way, it's a commonality,
It
if that
it
makes sense.
does. I didn't grow up seeing packets of drumsticks in a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
I saw chickens, I saw them being processed, and I enjoyed the meat.
Ah,
But I had a very, very
mm-hmm.
interesting experience in 2012, 2013. I was really obsessed with quails. I had bought quails when I lived in the
Oh,
Netherlands. They were already prepared. And then one day we had this farmer's market come to my office and I bought live quails. Oh my God.
whoa,
And I bought quails eggs and I was really excited. And I got home and
whoa.
my friend was like, "Oh, are you going to be able to eat those quails?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, of course?" She was like, "Well, they're live." I'm like, "Yeah, they're going to be processed and all of that."
Right.
Let me tell you, I got home. My kids saw the quails. They broke down in tears.
Oh,
I had a housekeeper and she processed the quails. I could not eat them. Watching that process of life to the plate,
it can be
it it
devastating.
cured me. I wrote a blog post about it. It cured me of quails. I haven't eaten quails since then. Maybe once or twice, but this is a like I have never bought quail again, processed or not. It shook me, and I think for the first time I understood why people made ethical decisions not
Hmm.
to eat meat. Because also quails are very small, so they looked like they were babies.
Oh, that's
But even though
heartbreaking.
they were full grown, but
Yeah.
it definitely changed my psychology and really expanded my understanding of what of how people's food preferences are informed.
Yeah, and understanding
Made me a
their,
little bit more
yeah, a
compassionate,
little
I
more
guess.
compassionate and valued. I know that's often a thing with people who don't eat meat. They're like, why? But I understand it too. There's just this detachment that we have from understanding, because I've always grown up. I know where meat comes from. I know it comes from the cow. I know it comes from wherever, but actually seeing that and experiencing that is a whole nother level of thinking. And I've been doing that through journalist trips I've been on. And once you see it, there's like this, it rewires your brain in a way where you're like, wow, now I understand and now I can appreciate the food on my plate more. I actually tried a quail egg recently. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. There's so much more to eat and enjoy. I'm like, okay, goodbye. On to the
It was a
next.
little, yeah, it was a little much for me. It was at a restaurant a few weeks ago and they had just brought it, and I was skeptical about it, but I was like, okay, I'll eat it. I probably wouldn't choose it for sure, but I mean, it
Yep.
was good. But I had kind of a similar moment too when I was on a traveling and they had brought foie gras. I'm totally butchering that. Yeah,
Foie gras. Foie
foie gras.
gras.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then that's pigeon, right?
I think it's the liver of goose, duck.
Okay, okay. It was duck.
It's
I have to look it up because they either said it was that or there was pigeon, but either way, out right outside the window were a ton of birds. And I was looking at my plate and I was looking at the birds and I just was like, please take it back. Take it back. I can't do it because, there's a lot of empathy that comes with that as well. And that's a trait that I have, sometimes probably to a fault, because I'm feeling things really deeply. And that I just felt it too deeply. And I was like, I can't eat this live thing. But yeah, I'm going off on a tangent, I think.
there's no it's not a tangent. I think it's really at the core of understanding our food preferences, but also understanding that there's a whole continuum that we quite often only see on the plate, right?
Right.
We see the finished product, but there's a whole lot behind it. And what informs our preferences and our desire. Like, we're complex people in how we make decisions. And so deciding, like, there's some things that don't sound right. And when you investigate, you're like, it's because there's meaning, you have maybe other experiences from other times, or just, there are many things that lead to how we make decisions about foods.
There's so many factors: how you grew up, where stores you were around, are you in farmland, are you in city, there's like so many incredible factors. And I've been trying really to go back and go to farmers markets and things like that to try to make more connections with local farmers or people like that, instead of, not that anything's wrong with like Trader Joe's. I love a good Trader Joe's, but trying to make that more
Yeah.
connection with food so that it's a little bit more meaningful when I'm cooking. But that being said, I was looking through some more of your work and I saw that you were featured on Anthony Bourdain's Part Unknown at one point, but I went to YouTube and it said the video was terminated, so I couldn't watch it.
I'm gonna try to find you a link.
Yeah.
There's, for some reason, and I'm not sure why,
Mhm.
the YouTube links keep changing.
Oh,
Like, I don't know what it
it
is,
must
but
be an
I'll find you a
SEO
link.
thing. Okay, I would love that because I was so bummed. I
I'll
really
find you a
wanted to
link.
watch it. Tell me about where you were at your career at that time and what it was like to be alongside Bourdain. I'd love to hear about your experience.
This was 2018. I was on the verge of quitting my career as a geologist
Huh.
and taking time off to focus fully on food and maybe go back to school. And so at that time, I was in a very new Nigerian kitchen headspace where I was exploring with Nigerian ingredients and kind of reimagining them as ingredients that didn't have to be confined to their traditional use. So I was using them in different
So
ways.
this was way after you started your food blog, Kitchen Butterfly.
Yes, this was about 9 years after I started my food
Okay,
blog.
great.
And what was interesting is I got to meet Anthony Bourdain twice in that week.
Oh,
That he was in Nigeria, I think maybe for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I got to cook for him, and then I got to go to lunch with him and my friends. So what had happened was
wow.
there's a young tech company that was doing really novel things with tech talent and software talent. And so all of the global spotlights were on them. And so Anthony Bourdain visited them, and I got to make lunch for him as he
Wow.
kind of talked to this young software engineers who were really like on the global stage doing outstanding work. And so I got to meet him. He was so tall. I'm not very tall. I'm 5'3", 5'4", and I was stunned at how tall he was. But I was also shocked at how real it felt to converse with him. And this was someone who I had watched
Yeah, forever.
videos of for like 10 or 15 years prior. So I had a concept of who I thought he was, and he was just very rugged and very open, very friendly, but not in a friendly in a very real way. Like there
Down
were
to
real.
earth.
I wasn't part of most of the conversations at that lunch because he was with a group of people. But as he asked about the dishes, I had catered a whole lunch,
Oh, wow.
including drinks, and kind of giving him a taste of my new Nigerian cuisine. So that was lovely to meet him there. And then a few days later, my friend Atim and her mom, Ikwa, invited me to lunch with them and Anthony Bourdain. And that it was fantastic because it was just the four of us. We got a chance to really chat and talk about blogging and writing and food culture and opinions of people. And it was just really lovely, pleasant, really engaging,
I would
really
ask a
engaging.
million questions.
And we tried and we did, and he was very very open. But you know how filming is,
Yeah.
right? But I consider that one of my happiest moments because I it was
Oh,
always on my wish list to meet him, and I'm glad that I got to cook for him and to meet him, and I think of him with fondness and sadness,
yeah,
and just,
I do. You never know
yeah.
what's going on in someone's mind. You really don't. Because even, like you said, you envisioned what he was like through the TV because that's his persona. And that's not to say that's not what he was genuinely like. Like he
Hmm.
was always interested in culinary and more down to earth, I guess. But you just never know what the inner workings of someone is. So that's wonderful. It's one of your happier memories. I've interviewed a few chefs who've spoken to him as well, and they've only said great things too. So, what did you cater for them for lunch? What did you make?
So there's a drink, one of my specialties in
Yeah.
my new Nigerian kitchen exploration phase, which is ongoing, is reimagining things that Nigerian ingredients could be. So taking fruits, for instance, that we've only ever enjoyed out of hand and making them into drinks. So I made one of my specialty drinks called agbalulade, and
Ooh,
it's a contraction of the fruit name agbalumo and lemonade. So agbalulade.
I'm already intrigued. I'm
And
already sold.
oh, it's so good. So agbalumo it's the African star apple. It's similar to a fruit called milk fruit. Like there's purple milk fruit, there's like a green one, but it's just this rich, sweet, tart, sour fruit that works really well as a drink. So I made some agbalulade. I made some snails, kind of like French style snails. So in Nigeria we have snails.
Okay. I don't think
Okay,
I
they're
knew
not
that.
sim.
That's so interesting.
They when they're not sim. They're land snails as opposed to French sea snails,
Okay.
and they're larger, but they have a very interesting texture, like a chewy crunch.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, they're a
Texture
little
kind of
bit.
gets me sometimes, so I'm like up in the air about it.
It's like a crunchy rubber. That's the
Hmm.
only way I know how to describe it. But it takes on flavors really well. The texture's really interesting. And there's kind of like an aroma when it's cooked. I think I did jollof rice,
Oh, I know
which is,
that one.
yeah, okay, yeah. So I think I did jollof rice. And what else? I might have done. It's funny. I can't remember a lot. I have to go back to my emails to kind of
Yes,
dig up. But
you.
I know that I did the agbalolade. I did something also with pomo. So pomo is beef hide. It's kind of like chicharron, like pork hide, but the skin of the beef, and it's not crunchy. Again, it has that chewy, crunchy
Like
texture when
tender,
it's
tender.
tender, but also with a like a
Hmm.
snap,
Yeah,
a
I know what
little,
you mean.
yeah.
Okay.
So I did that, and I feel like I might have done dessert. I'm just not sure of what that was.
No,
I
that
need to
sounds.
go back into the archives
Yeah.
and
I do that too. I always forget everything. No, that sounds so delicious. I had one other Nigerian chef on here. Are you familiar with the Billionaire Chef?
yes, Tolu Eros.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Yeah, I had
yes.
him on here too, and
Oh, nice.
he made us a dinner. This was months, maybe over the summer now, because he's doing his dinner at home experience. So he has
Mm-hmm.
the guests in his home, and then he cooks. And we talked at length about jollof rice. So I'm like,
Wow.
loved it. But he made this drink too that I made him say on recording.
Chapman.
Because, was it that? Because I forget it.
What was in it? What was in it?
It escapes my mind every time I'm telling
What
you.
was the color?
It was like pinkish, like kind of red. I don't know.
I think it's Chapman. It's either Chapman. It sounds like it's either Chapman or a hibiscus drink. Was it a
Yes,
hibiscus
yes,
drink?
that was it. That was it.
Zobo.
Yeah,
Zobo.
yeah,
Okay,
that.
gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha,
because
gotcha,
I made him say
gotcha.
it on here because I was like, I need to remember what this
I
is.
need to watch that episode. Is the episode live?
Yeah, it's just recorded through audio,
Okay.
but it is up.
I need to
Yeah,
listen. Okay, I will listen to it. I
yeah,
think
that was a
it
while
sounds like
ago.
Zobo.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was that. That was a few months ago now, but you can scroll back and find it.
Well done.
So incredible. But yeah, I know everyone cooks their jollof rice a little bit differently. That was what I kind of learned. So I'm interested. What's your tip? How do you do it?
My tip is cook the tomato sauce twice.
Oh,
First to reduce and kind of smooth off the round, kind of round off the edge. You know how tomatoes can be really tart and raw. So
mhm.
I make a puree, blend the tomatoes, onions, and pepper mix, and then I reduce that, and then I fry that. And when Nigerians say fry, it isn't like deep fry. It's kind of like a saute or make like a
I'm
sauce.
Italian. We deep fry.
We do too, but I have to say to people that the terminology of Nigerian cuisine sometimes needs to be explained because Nigerians will say fry and people will expect them to be deep frying, but they're just talking about a small portion of oil kind of to form the sauce base.
Like, yeah, like sauteing, but a little extra.
Persist, yes, that.
Okay.
And so cook that reduced tomato base in a mix that's really fragrant with curry powder, dried thyme, but it also has like aromatics. So I have like my bay leaves, I have tomato paste that I really cook down until it becomes sweet and dark. And then I add a flavorful curry stock base. And that really sets me up. Like once I make sure that my stew is correct, Nigerians will, instead of saying right, will say it has to be correct. So I make sure that my stew base is correct. And then it's pretty much about the ratios. So we're not making risotto, we're making a rice that's more like a pilaf, like the grains are singular. In Nigeria, we'll say the grains are 1-1. And so it's just making sure that I don't flood the rice at the start with too much liquid. The liquid is adequate, and then cooking, like starting off on really high heat, and once it starts to bubble, turning it down to simmer and steam for the rest of the cook time. Right? So
Oh,
it's just little things like, getting the ratios right, cooking, starting off with a flavorful
precision.
base, and then that steaming.
I bet you your household smells incredible.
You know what? Today, my son is part of international club at his high school.
Oh, cool.
He's in grade 12, and today he was presenting on Nigeria. So he made me make
Oh,
jollof rice and some stuff. And I actually
oh,
took
that's
it to
awesome.
school, watched his presentation, and then the class ended up feasting on jollof rice,
Oh my
meat,
gosh.
and it was amazing to
That
see
must have been
this.
such a proud mom moment for you.
It was. And I just kept saying to him, like, I'm so amazed. You spoke so well. Like, you really shared so much. I didn't realize that he knew that much about Nigeria. And he was like, yeah, I researched it. And I was like, yeah, that's how people know things too. You know, that's okay. But it was also really nice to see his classmates who were from around the world, like, really tuck into the jollof. Like,
Yeah, and
ask
dive
me
in.
about chin chin. Like they were it's lovely when you host people and they're curious. I think that the curiosity really had me, and the willingness to try. It was beautiful for me. It was really
Oh,
beautiful.
that's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I always feel like I always kind of say the first step is education, but honestly, I think it's one before that. And I think the first step is open-mindedness and what you're willing to learn about. And you're such a great base for learning about Nigerian culture because of all of your research and your new cookbook and all of that. So I'm sure he learned some stuff inadvertently from you too. But I'm sure all the kids were like, "You're such a great source. I'm gonna just beeline for you."
It was really lovely because also teenagers are an interesting bunch. So I was like,
Yeah, they're scary.
yeah, in a way, but they were
Yeah.
so warm and open. I was like, wow, okay, okay.
Oh, that's so good to know because I know they're getting a bad rap for not wanting to learn right now. So it's nice to hear that they're actually diving into everything.
Yeah.
There is a gap that I kind of skipped over in your background that I wanted to chat about a little bit. So, this is when you moved to the Netherlands and then you eventually launched your food blog. I know you kind of had an internal struggle where you kind of felt out of place in the Netherlands. So, what led you to starting the blog? Was there a turning point for you?
There was. It was a Friday night, and it also involved green beans and green bell peppers.
Oh, it all comes back to the bell peppers.
It does for some reason. It's a
Yeah.
Friday night. I was making Chinese fried rice in our open style kitchen in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
My ex partner, well, my ex, was sitting and working on his blog. My Mexican friend Paula was sitting and working on her blog, and I was cooking and
Were
prepping,
they
and
both food bloggers?
they were both general life bloggers. They were doing
Oh, okay.
lifestyle content,
Okay, okay.
and they were both working on their blogs, and I was cooking, and we're all chatting. And I'd been reading blogs for years. So Clotilde, Chocolate and Zucchini, there were a few blogs that
Love.
I had been reading. And I was like, in between chopping peppers and prepping the rice, and I was like, I could start a food blog too. And it was almost like there was a voice sharing that, and I was like, oh, I could. I totally could because I'd always loved writing. In fact, I wanted to study literature, but my father was like, not on my pension, you won't. I had won a poetry competition while I was at university. I had written
Oh, cool.
essays my whole life. I was an avid reader. My mom was an English teacher, so we wrote essays even about pets we didn't have. Right? And so I was like, I love writing. I love food. I'm going to do it. This was September 2008. I used to be a perfectionist. And so it took me
You're
nine
looking at one
months.
right now.
I'm now of the opinion that good is better than perfect. Like done is better than perfect. And
Oh, I'm getting there. I need to learn that lesson still, but
yeah, it took a while though, but it took me 9 months to birth Kitchen Butterfly. I wanted the blog, I wanted there to be static pages that people could refer to, even if I didn't have a lot of dynamic and updated blog content. So I read a book by Yaro Starak, and it's called Blog Blueprint. I think I read it in 2007 or 2008, and I followed everything to the letter. I was like, okay, I'm going to make sure I have multiple pages so that people can find different things. I really thought about the layout, the design, the structure. And then I started at June 2009, and my first post was a very simple soup recipe. I think it was Dutch mustard soup. That was my first
oh,
recipe.
interesting.
And then maybe banana bread was the second. But
Of course, you got to have the banana bread in
yes, yes.
there.
And so that was kind of the journey to starting Kitchen Butterfly.
Oh, that's okay, amazing. So that will lead me to our next topic, talking about your book. Chop Chop Cooking the Food of Nigeria is the name. I understand, just through talking to you two, but it seems like your goal is really to have people learn about food, but also enrich the experience for more of a soul purpose, I guess. I was wondering how creating this book for you, how is that an enriching experience?
Ooh, enriching and humbling. I've always wondered why there weren't full color Nigerian cookbooks. And my dream of writing a Nigerian cookbook stretches back decades. Thankfully, since then, we've had various, Nigerian books that have come to life. Lokmaya Rio's Hibiscus, Memories on a Platter by Ikwo Uko, My Everyday Lagos by Yewande Komolafe. There's a book, Long Throat Memoirs, that is poetry and prose. And anyway, I'd always been like, I wrote the book that I would have loved to have when I first started cooking Nigerian food, that shared with me the codes and the context, that presented Nigerian cuisine to me as something worthy to be considered of as gastronomy. So somewhere in there, that my life has been enriched by being able to imagine and create this world that showcases, but importantly celebrates the culture, the cuisine, and the people. The process itself has kind of taken me through despair. Like, I took on this task, but I don't think I'm able to do it. It's taking me on the journey of building my confidence. Like,
Self doubt.
all the work you've invested, so you just have to put it together. One of the most fascinating things for me is a cookbook is actually a cohesive story, but it's really vignettes. It's really very short recipe. It's like the food version of a book of short stories.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a really good explanation. I like that a lot.
I'm not a short story writer. I'm
Me
not.
either.
I can
No.
waffle. You know?
I'm great at enhancing and BSing and kind of making things eccentric. So I understand your
I
pain.
don't know, but I don't know that it's BS. I think it's useful context. I think it's
It's
poetry.
creativeness.
I think it's
Yeah.
color. And that was a huge challenge for me. How do you tell the story of that particular recipe? Because many of the recipes that I share have multiple stories. Which one do I most want the reader to remember? Which one has that story that can meet the reader where they are, can explain my own thoughts and feelings and emotions about this recipe? So it was quite an interesting process, because each one demanded its own story be told in a particular way. But as a whole, they said, we're a community of recipes. You have to make sure that people get a sense of how we're part of this community of Nigerian cuisine. So it was just looking back, I loved the process. When I was in it, it was grueling. It was It was
But I'm sure
hard.
you're happy it's
And I
done.
would do it again. I would do it again. I wouldn't trade. I think I learned about mechanics, the process, but I also learned about strategy, right?
Right, and planning
And I
ahead.
remember starting off wanting to write once a week. I was going to dedicate one day a week to write. But that every time that Wednesday came up, there was an emergency. I couldn't physically write one thing or the other. And I spoke to a friend, Catherine Pauline of Cardamom and Tea,
Oh,
who
yeah.
also has two books. And I called her and spoke, and she was like, she told me she set up a daily practice of writing. That transformed my life. Because what a daily practice does is it keeps you familiar with the subject enough that you can do this outpouring, but step away. She said she set an alarm and no one was allowed to disturb her, and she sat. And whether she had writing to do, she did something that was book related, whether it was work on her photo list or some other thing. That helped me. I couldn't do it every day, but it meant that I was there wasn't 7 days in between my writing periods. Sometimes there was a day, sometimes two, but it was never more than that. And that it meant I could keep the flow going. And then I read or heard from someone, and I don't know who, but it was always leave your writing midway. So if you're writing about a thing, don't write it to the end. Stop
Oh, that's so tough for me.
Stop partway, but stop where you're confident. Stop where you're looking forward to the next bit so that the next day when you go or the next time you turn up, you're already looking forward to the bit that's coming, but also you already know. So you're starting in a place of strength, but also in a place of joy. And
Oh,
that
wow.
really
Yeah.
transformed things for me. It,
You're
it made
transforming
it,
things for me a bit right now because I'm writing a. This is going to take me forever because because writing is my full-time job as well. But I'm trying to write a fiction book, and I was just talking to. I did a writer's workshop with a romance writer, Colleen Oakley, who I was picking her brain for so much advice, and I haven't picked up the book in a month and a half. So I'm like, how can I implement a way where I just get it done because I'm such a perfectionist. Like I need to read something over 10 times and then I'm not moving forward. I'm just standing still. So this is helping me. Your daily practice and your tips are really helping me kind of figure out for myself how to maneuver, and finish, not everything things have to be good, right? They don't have to be perfect
They
all the
don't,
time.
because that's another important thing. So I think also this period of not doing anything is also useful. It's also very useful. We may not, but there are things that are milling about. There are things you're observing that you will bring to the page. But this thing about a manuscript is it goes through so many edits. If I look at what I submitted and I looked at Chop Chop now,
Yeah.
wow, wow.
World's different.
Wow. The 6 or 7 cycles, eight on countless cycles that went. And I think that's important. That crafting by crafting, step by step, brick by brick is important work. When I worked as a geologist, one of the key things that I learned early on was to make the map early. I was an exploration geologist, and
Oh, cool. Yeah.
maps were the mainstay of all the work that we did because they helped us identify where the treasure of the resources were. And people would wait months into the journey to make a good map because first of all you would actually do the work of mapping. And my supervisors, my friends, older people always said, make the map early. You'll see where the bullseyes are. You'll see where the artifacts are. You'll be able to correct those. And then you continue to improve upon that map as you go through the
Wow,
process.
you're nailing my problem one by one. That's my exact issue is I go too far into the process and then there's holes and then I'm not sure where things connect. So I'm feeling it in my soul right now.
But you're doing the work, so keep going.
I will. How did you? I think this will be helpful for anyone listening too, but how did you get through those periods of self-doubt that you mentioned? How did you push through?
Memory is a big thing for me. I look back on my past, I look back on difficult times, and I'm like, oh, I went through that. I can do it again. I know that this too will pass. I'm also a woman of faith, and so prayer, kind of that reflection, really, really helped me. The daily practice, I think, is one that is instrumental. Showing up
For
in
yourself?
in spite of the doubts, turning up at a scheduled time and saying, "Well, I'm here again. I may not feel it, I may not be energized, I may not have all the answers, but I'm here." The other thing was I didn't let structure overwhelm me. So it meant that I didn't have to necessarily progress through the book in a chronological sense. If I was bored with one chapter, I moved on to another chapter and did that work. So I gave myself flexibility in what I chose to address. I know that I like chronology and I like sequence and order, so I would come back to that, but I didn't let even that regimen stop me from occasionally exploring some other parts that gave me a boost, that gave me energy.
Oof, my
So
type A personality is pushing through there. I like I mean, everything that you said was incredibly useful, but I like what you said about using your devastation points in your life as more of a strength and maybe remembering it as more of a this is what I did to get through something versus like, oh, that time in my life was terrible and it sucked and whatever. But you still moved on and you're still here. I think that's really important to have that kind of mindset with anything, but especially when you're trying to push through a passion project. It's a really good reflection point.
thank you. I mean, I think about, that period when I didn't like my work as a geologist and how food gave me that space, but how I really had to imagine the path to food because there wasn't a direct, clear line
Right.
connecting
And
them.
there normally isn't.
And so every time I think I can't do it, I'm like, you changed careers. Might have taken you 20 years, but you
Yeah.
did it and you did it successfully. You did it in a way that they're lasting lessons. And yeah, it's a time I definitely reflect on a lot.
Yeah, and I mean that was your path. I mean, you have to find not I don't want to say the failures because that's not the right word because it wasn't a failure, but maybe the struggles or things you're not as interested in order to find the things you are. So I always think like failures or struggles are more of just a checking off list of like, okay, now I know for sure that's not something I need or want.
What's interesting was in 2010, I went to a conference in Paris, Women in Networking, and they talked about attended a session where the presenter and the speaker talked about how failure is as important as success. But quite often we don't stop to really evaluate our failures, which means that we don't take on the lessons, the valuable lessons that we could have gotten from failure. And it transformed things for me such that I started actively auditing my failures when I failed. And it could be the way I responded to my child when they asked me for something because I was stressed about something else I didn't want to communicate to them. In the process of really sitting down and thinking through what I didn't do well and what I would do next time made me better prepared. Because guess what? I find that when I don't learn a lesson in one particular area, it repeats itself until I learn that lesson. And so failure's good
It
is
is.
my takeaway.
No, it is. It is. I mean, the definition of insanity is repeating, the same thing over and over and expecting the same result.
Yep.
So, or
With
expecting a
different
different result. Opposite. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think I feel like it's taken me a lot to get there, but I feel like the failures are what took me to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so like headstrong about things where we want everything to be fast paced and we just like don't stop to be emotionally in tune with ourselves and think, okay, why did I react this way? Why did this, happen, or whatever questions that you're having in your mind. But I'd love to circle back to your cookbook. I have my last two questions for you because I know we're at an hour already. What's one Nigerian recipe you're most excited about? I know you really narrowed down on them. So what's one that if someone was listening to this and were interested in your cookbook, that you would pitch them and say, this is the recipe you need to try?
Make Chapman. It's a drink. It is like a Shirley Temple in that it uses soda and like a cordial to make.
You got me at Shirley Temple. Wow,
So,
you got me there.
so I haven't actually tried a Shirley Temple. I need to find a place where they make a good one, or maybe I need to just try to make one
Oh, go
myself.
to any Italian American restaurant.
Okay,
Are you kidding?
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
anyone. It's my childhood. I would say Shirley. I think I got one like a few months ago,
okay.
honestly.
So Chapman is very similar to that in the sense that it's made with orange and lemon and lime soda with
Yum.
a blackcurrant cordial, typically Ribena, Angostura bitters, and finished with cucumber, lemon, and lime is
That sounds so refreshing.
refreshing. Like it is more than the sum of its parts, and you can always do an adult version with like Campari or something, or
Oh, of
or
course.
something else. But that's definitely a great recipe for all year round, but super enjoyable in the summer as well. I actually made some with my son's class, and they were like,
Oh,
"Whoa, whoa!" They were really taken. It was just so beautiful to see. But Chapman is definitely one recipe I'd say. It's quick. It's easy. There are 6 or 7 variations that I share in the book, and you can make it your own as well. So for a variety of ages, it's you know so many age groups can explore it and make it, and it delivers stunning results.
amazing. Just leave out the Campari part for those kids.
Yes, yeah, please, yes, yes, yes. That's the very adult spiked version,
Very
not
adult, far in the
not for
future.
children. Yes.
I love it. All right. So, is there anything else you have going on? Any upcoming projects you'd like to talk about while we're here?
One of the things that I really enjoy about food is this exploration of similarities across cultures and cuisines. And I think about it as all the ways we're similar in spite of our differences. And I tried to highlight a lot of that in the book, whether it was in techniques or similar dishes from across the world, similar eating styles. And and I shared a lot of those because I've been working on a map-based project, an atlas of what I
Oh,
think of as global foodways. And so I'm highlighting dishes that exist in multiple cultures. I'm highlighting celebration styles. Like many cultures have some kind of rice feast.
yeah. Rice is such a jumping off point for so many
Yes.
recipes.
So many cultures have a healing broth, a drink
Yeah.
made with hibiscus, fried dough, whether it's zipoli or
Yep.
or in Nigeria puff puff, right? So there's so many, and some of these connections are the result of shared history, similar geographies, or even just human DNA. Like at the bottom of paella, you have that crispy, toasty bottom
Oh,
of rice
delicious.
sokarat. I don't know if there's a
Mhm.
name for it in Italian, but in Nigeria we call it bottom pot.
I have to think about that. I'll get back to you.
There's a version in Italy, Korea,
Yeah. I
Japan.
mean, we have risotto and all those base rice dishes, but
So so these atlas basically maps those foodways, showing
oh,
them as
cool.
layers of connectedness. So that's what I'm currently building.
That sounds so interesting. So that would be kind of like a book?
Right now it's a map. It's like a Google map with the layers. And I currently
Oh,
have
cool.
6 layers, but I'm also building, not yet online, a version in Airtable. I don't know if you know Airtable. Oh,
I do. I use it often for
love it. I'm obsessed with
I've been
Airtable.
using it for my stories, food and wine. Like a bunch of those people kind of use it.
I am
Yeah.
obsessed with the gallery function. Somewhere in my life, I fell in love with museums. And when I moved to Canada 5 years ago, I did a museum and cultural management course, a diploma. And so I have I've been building kind of like image galleries and curating a variety of different subjects and topics and themes, but using the gallery function in Airtable. Absolutely
Oh,
love it.
cool.
So I'm currently documenting these connections in Airtable, and then I'll translate those to a map. I'm
Wow,
currently
that
working
sounds
on
so
that.
that sounds like my journalist and like foodie dream in one. Wow. That's well, definitely keep me updated
I
on that because I'd
will.
love to hear about the project when it comes up and
I
everything.
will do.
And I know I saw even too, didn't you create a map in Nigeria for produce?
I did. I did. I created a seasonal produce calendar for Nigeria. I created a foodways kind of worked on a foodways map. It was illustrated. There's an illustrated version in my book. So yeah, I love codifying and translating knowledge into easy to understand documents that
Into
people can
visual.
reference. I think that's very much my science
Yeah.
part. Translate kind of that intersection of the art of exploring these things, the research and the science in kind of expressing them.
I'm realizing that you're one of those guests that I could probably keep on here for hours and pick your brain for hours, but I won't do that to you, I promise.
Thank you so
Of
much. It
course.
was really lovely to be
Of
here.
course. All right. So here is my final question for you that I ask every single guest. If there is one cooking utensil or appliance you think everyone should splurge on, what would it be and why?
Whew. Okay, I'll keep it simple. I have a favorite. Okay, I'm currently I'm currently obsessed with French presses.
Ooh, I haven't gotten that one yet.
Like so I found out that because I don't have a proper coffee maker, I don't have a coffee maker. I have like a mocha pot and a French press. I froth my milk in my French press. Oh my word.
Next level.
It is the most next level thing. But I also have used my French press to brew different types of teas, coffees, obviously, even spice blends. Like I've put spice blends in water and made like a
Oh,
little quick brew
smart.
with it. So I am definitely thinking of getting like a. I have one. I'm unfortunately chipped part of it. It's glass, and so I'm still using it. There are no risks, but at some point I might
Gotta upgrade.
kind of research the best French press. I really like French presses, but also wooden spoons. Especially, the spaghetti spoon that has like a little
Yes.
hole. That's my favorite spoon in the world. I use it for
I need
everything.
to
So yeah.
invest in nice ones because mine are. I have a gas stove that's very hot, and I have some wooden spoons, and they're
Mm,
burning up.
that are
Yeah,
burned
I hate that. I don't know what is up with that, but it's really frustrating me. So I need. If you find a good one, let me know.
on it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this. This was one of my favorite conversations to date for sure, and I'm so glad we
Thank you
connected. And
so much.
let's connect in the future. Definitely. I love
We
everything you're.
will. I will definitely keep in touch. I appreciate your warmth,
Oh,
your
thank you.
like the time you took to one invite me, have me on, set it up, but also research, learn. I really value the work that you do in
Oh,
connecting people and telling these stories,
thank
telling
you.
whatever stories there are, but just making space for people and putting your heart and soul in it. So thank
Thank
you
you.
very much,
Thank you
Liv.
for
I
recognizing
appreciate
that. Of
you.
course, because, it's really important to me to not every, big outlet covers the people that I want to cover all the time. So that's why I kind of created this space to showcase people like you who are doing so many amazing things. And, you wouldn't be here if you weren't doing incredible things. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so you can keep up with Ozoz on Instagram at Kitchen Butterfly or on her website, www.ozozsokoh.com. Hey, fellow foodies, thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to leave me a review. While you're at it, make sure to follow me at livvinforfoodpod on Instagram or TikTok, or email me at livvinforfoodpod@gmail.com. Let me know what you're cooking up this week, which guests you would like to see on the podcast, or tell me your opinions on the latest viral food trend. And in case you're just joining me, there is an entirety of Season 1 ready and waiting for you. Until next time.